Edom exists at this time. Amos 9:12, that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all of the heathen which are called by my name, saith the Lord that doeth this. So when Israel is going to be cut down with the sword, all the sinners of my people are going to be cut down, and the house of David is raised up, they're going to possess the remnant of Edom. This cannot be fulfilled in the millennial reign of the Messiah, because Edom is destroyed by that time, and Saviour shall come down upon Mount Seir, on Mount Edom, in Edom's territory. And it says that a few verses earlier in Obadiah that Edom is going to be destroyed. It's going to be cut off. So in order to possess the remnant of Edom, this must occur before that time. So the house of David, the tabernacle of David, and the regathering of the lost tribes is going to occur before the tribulation. This is very clear. I can't understand why people can't understand this and see this. In Obadiah, Edom, Esau is completely destroyed forever. Thus this verse again confirms that the sequence of events refers to a period before the tribulation, when the house of David, or the tabernacle of David, is raised up. And then compare this with what we've read in Ezekiel 34 about David being a king and being raised up. And the Levitical priesthood and the whole temple is going to be raised up. David brought the tabernacle from Shiloh, and he brought it into Jerusalem. And he was given the plans to build Israel. Not build Israel, build the temple of Israel. And his son Solomon built it. Thus Edom returns to his ancestral land after World War III, but before the tribulation. So Edom is going to return, a remnant of Edom that fears the Lord is going to return to their land, and Israel is going to possess them. And this is going to be before the tribulation, and this is going to be when the lost tribes return. We know that because the book of Ezekiel tells us that the house of Israel is going to be taken out of the countries that they're scattered, and he's going to judge the shepherds of the house of Israel, raise up new shepherds, and bring the remnant of his sheep back to the mountains of Israel, and then he's going to restore David, and he will reign over them. So here's the sequence of events. We just need to put these Old Testament prophecies together, but it's just going to rock people's paradigm, because Christians read the New Testament, they were blind for a long period of time about who the house of Israel is, the lost tribes. They were also blind about who Edom is. And because they don't understand all of this, they don't concentrate on these verses and put it all together. So many American Christians are teaching that the next event is the tribulation. No, it's not. The next event is tribulation, but it's not the tribulation. It's birth pangs of the Messiah. It's the convulsions, nations rising up against nations, kingdom against kingdom. We're going to have earthquakes in diverse places. We're going to have the return of the lost tribes. We're going to have Ephraim looking and for the old waste places to rebuild them. He's going to turn again to these thy cities, and they're going to set up a way back to the promised land, and that area is going to be cleared of many of the enemies of Israel. And currently we're seeing the Middle East begin to boil. Well, it always does, but we've got a great deal of trouble happening in Damascus. And it says when Damascus is taken away from being a city, then Jacob is made thin. And I speak about this on another video talk, and I go into all of that in great deal of detail. So that meshes in with the time period of the regathering of the lost tribes, because God is going to bring terrible judgment when Jacob is made thin, when it's like an olive tree that's shaken. And sadly, to the detriment of many American Christians and Messianics, their leaders can't see the trouble coming and won't announce that there is actually judgment coming to America and also to the lost tribes. And I hope to God that this message gets out to Messianic people and that they view these things very seriously. We're entering into a time of judgment. And God's not going to wait for us to figure it out. We're running out of time rapidly. And I speak this as we are approaching the last couple of months of 2013. So let's read on. So here is the area allotted to the sons of Abraham and Israel in particular, the land between the rivers. And here are some reasons for the regathering of Israel before the tribulation. Israel possesses the remnant of Edom. That we've just discussed that. After David's fallen tabernacle was raised up, as we've just read in Amos 9:12. This cannot be after the tribulation because Edom is destroyed then, and we read about that in Obadiah. The temple is established in righteousness. Everywhere where we've had the temple described, both the previous tabernacles and temples, they've all been established in righteousness. They've not been established by an antichrist, but they've been destroyed by antichrists. The first temple was destroyed when Nebuchadnezzar and when the Babylonians came to take Judah captive for 70 years. The second temple was destroyed by the Romans, and the third temple will be built after the return of the lost tribes, or during that time period when the house of David is restored. It will be built in a time of righteousness, and it will be destroyed during a time of apostasy. And there will be the apostasy, and then the man of sin will be revealed, the Antichrist, the beast, the son of Satan, when he claims himself to be God and he sits in the temple of God. So this temple that's going to be built is going to be desecrated in the future. We've already seen the pattern. And then there's going to be a final temple that's going to be built when Yeshua returns. That temple that is in Ezekiel 40 is going to be built. And that will be the base of Yeshua's, that's going to be his house when he returns to reign in glory over all Israel and over all nations, and David will reign as a king under him. So we're going to see the temple built, and then the kingdom comes to Israel. Before it comes to the whole earth, Israel is already in the land by the time of the events in Revelation chapter 4 and onwards. We're not living in the time that we see in the book of Revelation from chapter 4 onwards. We're not living in that sort of world just yet, but we're moving rapidly towards it. And Christians will say America is Babylon, or Nineveh, or whatever. We can see aspects of Babylon in America very clearly. It's like a prototype. Yes, it's had a Christian base, but it's also had a satanic, Masonic, Babylonian base to it. So America is kind of a prototype of Satan's kingdom in that aspect. I don't mean Christian America. I mean post-Christian pagan America. It's a prototype for Babylon. And so they're sharpening their game. They're working on America, the new Atlantis. But the final last days empire is going to be over 10 regions of the earth, the 10 toes of Nebuchadnezzar. It's not just 10 regions in Europe, it's 10 regions, 10 kings of the earth. And Babylon is going to be the center of that. And Babylon is going to spread its tentacles into all the nations. And it already has. But wickedness is going to have a house built for her in the land of Shinar, as it says in Zechariah chapter 5. So wickedness is coming back to the land of Shinar. And in Genesis, we read that they came to the land of Shinar and built a tower and that place was called Babylon. So wickedness is returning to the land of Shinar, but the kingdom is coming to Israel. And we read in Joel chapter 2 that before this great army, which is mistakenly called the Lord's army, yes, the Lord's in front of it, but they're not a good army. They're bad guys, but the Lord's using them to bring judgment. That before them it's like the Garden of Eden, but after it it's a burnt out up wasteland, and that may tie in with that locust invasion in the book of Revelation. The land of Israel has been greening up in places, but it's not like the Garden of Eden everywhere just yet. But the Jews have done a wonderful in that small. In some parts of Israel, they've really made it blossom, but it's still got a long way to go. So it's not this verse in Joel chapter 2 verse 3 about it being like the Garden of Eden before this invasion indicates that there is a further restoration coming before we get to that invasion. So there's going to be this is another indication that there's a restoration of Israel, of greater Israel, and it's going to become green and verdant like the Garden of Eden, because it is the Garden of Eden. We know also that the Gog-Magog invasion precedes the tribulation. But the first Gog-Magog invasion is before the tribulation, but after the regathering. You read Ezekiel 38 and 39, which follow Ezekiel 36 and 37, the Valley of Dry Bones. The house of Israel was raised up, and then it's joined with the house of Judah. And then Gog invades from the land of the north, and there's an army that comes with them from other nations. And I would put it to you that it's very, very clear from this, because it says that they've just been brought back from the sword. The house of Israel has just been brought back from the sword. So this is showing that just after the house of Israel returned to the land of Israel, Gog invades. And then Gog and his army are destroyed. Fire comes down from heaven and destroys them, and also fire comes down upon their land that they came from and burns up 5 out of 6 people, and only 1/6 is left. And then there's a final Gog-Magog invasion, which is not the same one in the book of Revelation. Gog is released again. So who is Gog? Many people try to say that Gog is a Russian. He might be leading Russians. He might be leading an army from the north, but Gog is not Russian. I believe that Gog is a satanic prince. We'll see when it happens. By this period, we've already had the Nephilim come to the earth to some degree. We've already had these supernatural things begin to happen. As God is doing supernatural things, in Israel, God is also doing supernatural. Satan is also doing supernatural things amongst his people. So the kingdom of God comes to Israel before it comes to the nations, as we've seen before. If you read the book of Revelation, we've already got the 144,000, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. We've already got the 12 tribes in the land. Israel's already together. There's already a temple. So we're moving rapidly into that time, into the convulsions that will bring about the world as we'll see it eventually in the book of Revelation, but we're not there yet. There's Babylon in America, there's Babylon in the world, there's a world government on the increase, but this final convulsion will bring about the world government that the world elites want, and it will bring about the kingdom of God coming to Israel at the same time.